What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here. This time we're going to go over my tournament report for the ARG Indianapolis Circuit Series event. I piloted Thavas and it did me well. So going into the tournament, I felt pretty confident in my build because primarily the Saber Flow, the draws, and the Bubble Edge, I knew that I was going to generate big enough hands to go against the top decks, so that way I can compete against them and making sure I have enough hand to do my turns and to also guard against their turns. Also, having knowledge in matchups such as Chaos, Overlord, Ghidorah, and etc. helps a ton in tournament play. So I highly recommend do preparation, do your research. It'll help you in the long run. So that way when you go to a specific matchup, you have a game plan already in your head. The other thing I like about ARG events is that their Swiss rounds are best 2 out of 3. And that kind of helps with not losing to shit luck or a shit hand. So every so often you'll get no triggers, or you get crit sack, or you just get a shitty hand and you can't do anything about it and you'll just lose. So this is the type of tournament I actually kind of like, with the best 2 out of 3. So going into round 1, I was already facing Overlord. This matchup I won 2-0. So game 1, the general game plan was to have a full roll resist using Saberflow and Sipla, for example, where Ruler would give would give Saberflow resist. That way you can keep generating your advantage with Sipla and Saberflow and Sipla. And of course Melania is there to help back up if you don't have the Sipla as well. And he eventually noticed that he couldn't really deny Griffin any of my units because I was making sure that he couldn't disrupt my turns. So that did have him struggle a bit, and eventually I just got it. I think I got it on the second Alexandra's turn. Game 2, he made me go first, and he adjusted his strategy. Basically, he was taking less damage early on, so he was guarding much earlier, and hoping that he probably save his hand for later on or take the damage for higher attacks. Since I went first, I stayed at grade 1 for an extra turn, so that way if he rode up appropriately, I would get the first stride, and that's important. So I kept the same plan, basically making sure I have a full front row resist, and I went first stride and I generated enough advantage, and he G-guarded in the process, and I wasn't really doing a big amount of pressure, so he was able to drop cards like maybe like 5-10k shields to stop that. So he really only had 2 damage going into his turn, and he did a misplay. The misplay was that he thought he could do the ace and then use the 2 counterblasts to restand because he G-guarded, which is fine. But the problem was he used the stride skill Destiny, the counterblast one. So that put him into 1 counterblast left, and he didn't realize it until he did it, basically. So you can't really take that back. I guess he just wasn't used to being such a low damage in most of his games, I guess. So that really hurt him a lot, and he didn't do anything that turn, essentially. And the following turn, I just take it, basically. So yeah, friendly guy overall. He mentioned that he couldn't read my cards because they were too shiny. But I could tell he wasn't really knowledgeable in the new Thavas stuff, so he was looking at my cards like Sipla, he was looking at cards like Ruler, and all that kind of stuff. And he's just like, man, this thing just has resist no matter what. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of is resist force. Round 2, I faced Big Belly. This time, I also 2-0'd him. Game 1, I got to go second, so I got the first stride. I exploded on first stride and ended up with 13 cards in hand. And he even asked me, how many cards do you have in hand? And I told him 13. He's like, what the fuck? So yeah, and during that turn, he G-guarded. And he misplayed on the G-guard play. He G-guarded with the Fighter's Collection one, where you can basically flip something GB1, right? And then you will recycle whatever you guarded with, essentially. And by the time he realized that, he was like, oh shit, I'm not even GB1 yet. And I'm like, no, this is like my first stride. So yeah, he messed up on that, and he lost like 2 extra cards from it because of it. So that put him in an awkward position. And he did his turn. He couldn't do much with the new GR Ballora. And for the following turn, I just take it with the second Alexandra's turn for the win. Game 1, I went first, but I stayed at grade 1 again just to get the first stride. He actually rode up to grade 3 and I did get the first stride. We went back and forth a bit on the stride turns, and essentially it got to the point where I strode Alexandros for the third time. He had like 6 to 8 cards in hand, so I had a good feeling that this is for the kill turn. He had about 3 PGs, I think, and like 2 to 3 heals, and the PGs can get them another card by Soul Blasting. The new G-Guard, the turtle, can also get them a new card. So their 6 card hand or 8 card hand he had was actually more bigger than you would think. And this is the thing that Arwada was telling me before the event too, because he was playing Big Belly, and he's like, yeah, watch out for that. It seemingly looks like they may have a low hand, but in reality, they're going to get new cards to work with. And I'm like, that's a good point. So, yeah. But luckily, I had an Orphea behind an Adelaide, and so with that, that was enough to push all that guard and win that turn. So, yeah. He was a friendly guy overall, too. He was nice about the whole thing. Going into round 3, I faced CTB. Also went 2-0 in this one. Game 1, I thought we were playing the grade 2 game for a bit, and I eventually Sea-Breezed them. And I did some pressure and advantage gaining, and I ended up with 10 cards. So cards like Saber Flow over here helped out, and I think I had a Cipla too. So that gave me enough advantage to end on a good note for Sea-Breeze. And then his following turn, it turns out he was Great Suck. So he G-assisted and got the Chrono Jet, but once he rode, he figured out that he didn't have the Stride Fighter nor a grade 3 to pay the cost of Stride, so he attacked with a grade 3 Vanguard, essentially, and I already Sea-Breezed him, so that wasn't good for him, and I G-guarded that turn as well, so when I did Alexandros, I had Sea-Breeze and a G-guard already face up in the G-zone. So Alexandros flips again, and then that's a 15k bonus to my regard, so that did it. So going into game 2, this one was the actual intense game. This is one of my most intense games of the day. I got the first stride and generated enough advantage to get about 12 cards this time. The following turn, he kind of denies me CB. So he left me with 1 open CB on Pegasus turn. He was trying to get advantage back. And so I went back to my turn. And so I had Alexandros over here and Gafila face up in the G-zone. And I had a Cipla and an Adelaide to work with in my hand. Nothing else really to do a play. So I was just really thinking about it, and I had no way to countercharge, and the only way to do it was to use Gafila. And so I decided to go into Lambros, give Adelaide the resist so I don't get fucked up by a Hetero run, and then Gafila will give me the countercharge to use for Cipla. So I get to the 4th battle using Adelaide and Cipla together, and it did enough pressure. I got my 21k columns afterwards, and also I think I got a trigger, so that helped. And that did some decent pressure. So that was finally one of those moments where you actually go into Lambros. And I think it worked out. And so after that, he healed in one of those damage checks. So that was like his first heal. And then throughout the later turns, he healed 3 more times, I think. And those 3 more times were on his drive check. So he would not just, die, basically. And on his last year next turn, he did something really nutty. So you have the Cruisin Dragon, the grade 2 Chrono Jet, that on attack, counter blast 1, check top 3 for Zodiac Time Beast and add it to your hand. That guy, like a 0. He did that first, got 1 card. I think he got an Arca, so the PG. Then on the first gear next attack, he drove, check a stand, reset Cruisin Dragon. Cruisin Dragon attacked again, got him a heal trigger because he recycled 1 with Alluro and he time leaped, so he shuffled. Then on the second gear next attack, he drove check another stand and restood the Cruisin Dragon again, and he went off again, and this time he got like a 10k shield. So literally he got shield value off Cruisin Dragon 3 times, and he had enough counterblast for it. I realized that gear next doesn't even cost a counterblast, so he can use his counterblast on his rear guards that turn, no problem. So the following turn was my 3rd Alexandros turn, after going through the 2 Alexandros and even a Lambros turn. And so my turn was going to be big. And it got really close. And I think I break his hand by just like 5 or 10k shield. luckily I had Orphea in the mix to help me out. Oh, I don't have Orphea. There's Orphea. Put it right here. So yeah, Orphea really pulled through in that game to break that extra 510k guard that he really needed. So I won that 2-0. So then going into round 4, I faced the mayor, Thavas, and this one I went 1-2. And I faced Aaron Netabai. He used to be an admin on the Vanguardians group, and I also faced him back in August at the BCS in Indy, and he was playing Gears and I was playing Night Rose at the time. And it was top 4. And this time we're playing the mayor, and I even told him earlier in the day that I was like, huh, I see you're a man of culture. Because he's playing Thavas too. So game 1, he rushed me a bit, and my hand wasn't great. And when I mean my hand isn't great, I mean like I had 2 PGs and 2 heals. And by the time I got to first stride, I had the 3rd heal. I was just like, really? So I couldn't really do advantage gaining and pressure on my first stride at all much. And I just lived through his next turn, but I really didn't have anything to work with the next turn, the following turn. And I just couldn't do enough pressure, and he just gets it with a second Alexandros on me. Game 2, I got a better hand this time. He rushed me as well, and he was calling triggers like, I think he called Malika this game, and he was punching me and stuff. And I fought back with my own Malika and my own Tidal Assault. This time I did my Tidal Assault on Rigard. Like I mentioned in my deck profile, I actually try not to call Tidal Rigard anymore on the early game. So what sucked is that he gets the trigger on the first attack of the Tidal. So there wasn't really another attack coming from Tidal for that pressure. So like, I'm like, that sucks. And I was able to get first stride and generate a big hand still. I think I got like 12 to 14 cards. I think I was hitting draw triggers too, so that helped a lot. And I believe I get him on the second Alexandra's turn, so I had enough advantage to live through his first couple of stride turns. In fact, since I got first stride, he only had 1 stride turn, and I just take it over on the second stride turn. So, yeah. Now we're going into game 3. He also rushed me again, and I think he called like a Supersonic Sailor this time. He's saving his grade 2s basically for his first stride turn. And I noticed that he's trying to apply this pressure early on. I guess it's like the rush build of Thavas. And he gets the first stride. And it was a situation where I kind of had to ride grade 3. So he had got the first stride. First stride. And his second stride turn, he was 5 damage. So I was like, all I have to do is guard this turn, which I can, because I have like PGs and G guards. And next turn, I'm just going to do my second Alexandra's turn and just take the win, right? He drive checks 2 heals. So he goes from 5 damage to 3 damage. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Then comes back to my turn, and I can't really do a finishing turn because he's at 3 now. So it's just like, okay, now I need to generate some advantage. So I kind of went that route, and it didn't really work out as great as you think, because my cards were more geared to a finishing turn, such as Adele. And the last 2 attacks, one of them, he triple G-guarded. One of them was on Ionis, so he had 4 face-up G-guards at that point. And he did that because his following turn, he went into Alexandros, and he had about a shit ton of cards face up now at this point. And he didn't have the nasty. He had to call a Plato in the front row behind an Orphea, in front of an Orphea. But I think he had like 8 to 9 cards in the G zone, and it was just basically this Plato got 9 times 5, about 45. So 45 plus that's 51. About that range. So 40 to 50k columns is what I'm dealing with. And I'm just like, wow, I can't guard all this stuff. And I just lose. So, yeah. Aaron's a friendly guy overall. Aaron's a good player too. And I faced him before, like I said. And I guess this is payback. Because I won back in top 4 over there. And he also ends up getting first. So kudos to him. And I'll admit, I was a little salty for him getting his triggers when he really needed them against the title turns. He also got that double heal on that game 3 that really just turned it around for him. It's just ridiculous. Oh yeah, and the other thing happened in game 3. I called 2 titles and Rigard, and I had the bubble edge play where I was like, okay, I'm gonna do 5 attacks, but he ends up getting the trigger as well again that game, and I'm just like, well, there goes my early game, and it worked out still, but when he drove checked those 2 heals, it just like, phew, he got the game. So yeah, so I brushed that off and went into round 5. Going against Vanquisher, I 2-0'd this round. Game 1, I didn't call any rearguards early on. Vanquisher's just going to kill the front row with like the martial arts dragon, I believe. And I believe I got to go second, so I got the first stride. And I generated a big hand, about 13 cards, and he even asked me, how big is your hand, dude? And I'm like, 13. He's like, wow, I've never seen that big of a hand with Aqua Force. I'm like, yep, that's the plan. So I focus also attacking his rearguards early on where he would call them. Because generally, Vanquisher, I noticed, needs to have some form of kind of like a snowball effect, like Chichora mainly. But if he didn't have it and he would call different rearguards, I would just kill him. And then from that, they really can't generate advantage in that sense, outside of that. So that did hurt him. And he couldn't kill any of my units on my turn because, of course, thanks to Supreme Ruler, I was given Saber Flow, Adelaide, and even Tidal Assault, Resist. So that worked out really good for me. And after that, I think I finished him on the second Alexandro's turn. So going into game 2, I stayed at grade 1 for our turn because he made me go first, and I wanted the first stride still. And he let me have it, basically. And we get to a point where his second stride is a VMAX, but the problem is that he's not at Thunderstrike 5, so he won't deal the damage. But I was okay because I was at 4 damage, so I would just have to guard all the attacks, and I don't even think he called any front row. I think he couldn't even call any good rear guards, so he just VMAX and attacked my Vanguard, a Sipla, and a Melania, I think, that were on the field, and got rid of those. And in my following turn, I just went with the second Alexandro's turn. So yeah. I'm sure some of you are like, well, did you go in something else besides Alexandros and Lambros? Well, Alexandros does a lot of work. That's all I gotta say. I can't forget our man Title over here, too. I almost forgot about him. So, the next round was round 6. And it was against Asha. I had never faced Asha recently with the new support, especially the Zubooster stuff. And his name was Keegan. He's a good player. So all I know was basically watch out for the Vahumina turns, the new GR. And I know GB4, the rearguards get plus crit and plus 5k, so, and they're already making big columns by themselves, especially with the new grade 2 and grade 1 that get resist, and making their own columns as well. And boost, like what the hell? It just works out perfectly. So very big columns. We're talking about 30k and over, and then crit. It's just like you're dead at 4 still, and it's just like, wow, that's amazing. So early game, I attacked any rearguards that he called, and I noticed that he would guard early on more than most would. So I think he already knew what was coming against Thavas, and so I rolled the OG Thavas in this instance. The reason is because I think he only had like 1 rearguard in the front row, and then he had a starter in the back row, and that was it. So I wanted to kill a starter because I felt like that would hinder him a little bit that one next turn coming up, and I think it did. I noticed that he couldn't really do a good first stride turn, and thanks to that turn, I also generated a big hand, and it helped a lot to withstand his GB4 turn with the GR stride. And then I just take it back. I take the win with Alexandros the following turn. Game 2, we played the grade 2 game a bit. Eventually, I think he got first stride. And his first drive, he drove check double crit. So I PG'd the Vanguard because I didn't want to get critted out of the game, obviously. And he stacked the crit on each of those rearguards that were left to attack. And I was at 4, I think. So I couldn't take any of those, and I was forced to drop more hand and also G-Guard on one of those. So now my PG and my G-Guard are gone. Like, shit, I kind of want to save that for the next turn, which is this GB4 turn with the GR. And I was like, whoa, I gotta make sure I can draw enough cards to dig deeper into my deck to get more PGs and more heals to help me live for that turn. Because I know I'm not going to finish him off because he was like at 1 or 2 damage because he was guarding early. He was guarding everything. And Blue Asha does a lot of work. Like, you Superior Call, so it's a +1, and you can work with whatever you need at that point. So he was able to afford to drop the guard early on. And I got nothing. I got like 5k shields. I mean, I got like 9, 10 cards, but it's like they're all like 5ks at most, and I was just like, I'm dead. So I lost that game too. And now we went into game 3. And this time I went into Ruler. I got the first stride as well. And I had the Cipla in the back row. So during the stride turns, I would have this extra 11k poke from the back row, thanks to Cipla. And he also guarded early on. Same strategy he did. He rode Siren Heart, so I think that put him behind a bit. And eventually, we were going back and forth, and I finally break through on the third Alexandra's turn. And I think it came down to basically me having the play where I had the Orphea with the Adelaide. And I think drive checking 1 or 2 triggers actually just sealed the deal. And I think I drove check like 1 trigger at least, so that helped a ton. So that was good. Really awesome. Friendly guy overall. Very good Asha player. I think he's the best Asha player I've faced to date. His name is Keegan, and he also had Thavas too. And that's why he already knew how Thavas plays out. So that's why he was guarding early. And his strategy was to guard all the little stuff that he could early on, so he could just take all the big stuff when he had to. So, going into round 7, we're going against Big Belly, and it's my friend Eduardo. I was able to get 2-0 this round as well. Game 1, he rushed me with Duckbill Mike, and he also rolled Compass Line that turn, so he went second or first? First, he went first. So, his first attack turn was the Compass Line turn. Compass Line is an 11k grade 2, if those don't know it. And I was like, whoa, that's a good rear guard, or a good unit to ride. And he stayed at grade 2 an extra turn. So I sub-breezed him when I had like 4 damage. And I did a good amount of pressure. I believe I had an Adelaide, I had a Cipla. And then I think I also had the Cyberflow. So thanks to Ruler, I was able to put this in the back row and get that number of attacks up there and get draws. And I think I ended my turn with like 10 cards. So that was pretty good. And it put enough pressure that he went to 5 damage, and then his stride turn, he couldn't do enough pressure. And I think what also helped me is that I think I drove check a heal, so that put me back to like 3. So that's a huge difference when you're from 3 to 4 as well. So that helped a ton. Then I won the next turn. He couldn't really generate a big enough hand to deal with the next Alexandra's turn. And since I drove check the heal, I G-guarded, so Alexandra's was even bigger. Game 2. He rushed me again. I attacked rear guards mainly as well. I stayed at grade 1 for an extra turn. He made me go first, of course. He gave me that look like, you about to die, son. Because with like Duckbill, Mike, and all those units, the new artistic Ocelot too, Great Nature has a deadly early game. And I was just like, I know that it's going to hurt, but I plan to win for the long run. So that's why I stayed at grade 1. It worked out for me. I got the first stride. I generated a lot of cards first stride. I got 13. We went back and forth. There was a turn where he could have beat me. And what I mean by that is that I didn't have any real shield value except for 2 PGs. So if he would have shown Magnamar, I think that's what the stride is called. Yeah, Managarmor. That's what it's called. I would have just been dead because I couldn't guard with PGs on the right guards at that point. But he went into Ballora, the new GR stride, so I was able to guard through his attacks where I needed to. And the following turn, I believe it got to the point where I got to the third Alexandros, and I had about 6-7 cards face up in the G zone. And so I was hitting big numbers, and again, I had the Orphea and I had the Adelaide column, essentially. So, big attacks. Ed and I had fun still, and we didn't feel any like pressure because we pretty much felt like we would still be in top 8 if one of us lost. And to me, I like that we faced off at the last round, because it sucks to face your friend in like round 1 or round 2 because one of you is gonna lose, and now the loser has to basically make up for loss. And yeah, so you rather face your friends like in the finals or the last round, so that way you both have good chances of topping, and inadvertently you could help each other with tiebreakers too. So cool. So like I said in the deck profile, top 8 split, and so that was it for the day. I was pretty happy with the deck. I felt really good about it. I felt good that it performed well too. The fact that I was constantly having cards in hand on first stride, about 13 on average, I think. There were points where I touched 15. There were points where I touched maybe like 9 or 10. But it was doing really well, and it's Aqua Force, and I enjoy playing Aqua Force. Some people don't, but I do. I think this whole event, I didn't really do a misplay, at least to that I've noticed and would cause me the game. So I'm pretty happy on that too. I hate myself when I do mistakes on my own. So yeah, I'm kind of highly critical of myself sometimes. But this time I did really well compared to my last event with Night Rose. But Night Rose is a harder deck in a sense to play well, if that makes any sense. Yeah, and I realized that I too owed most of my opponents too. I only went to game 3 in 2 rounds, and one of them I only lost. So that's really good in my eyes. So yeah, and again, I'd really like going into best 2 out of 3 because you don't get shit out of luck when they, you know, trigger sack you or you get a shit hand. And so, yeah. It was also great to see some of my friends happy during the event, especially Eduardo. Eduardo was really happy at the very end of the event, too. And I could tell he was really happy playing his favorite deck, too, because he loves playing Great Nature. Miguel loves playing Overlord, too. So we're all playing pretty much our favorite decks, too. Where last year, I was playing Night Rose, and Night Rose eventually got into my heart, and I enjoyed playing Night Rose. Miguel had to play Time Leap, and he liked Time Leap, too. And then Eduardo would just play, like, Luard or other random shit. So, yeah. Luckily, it was this meta call that we can play our favorite decks and actually do well. So, hope you guys enjoyed the tournament report. Please leave a like, comment down below, share, and subscribe. See ya.